first and foremost, we need to address the terrible, tremendous storm that is over Florida's west coast. Hurricane Ian hit the western peninsula of Florida today as a Category 4 storm with maximum sustained winds of 155 miles per hour. The storm is moving very slowly as it makes its way across the peninsula. We are seeing devastating pictures coming from Sanibel Island, also coming out of Fort Myer, where there are expected 12-foot storm surges. This is a historic storm that will drop an unprecedented amount of rain on the Florida Peninsula. And as we look and see, number one, seeing these storms, these kinds of devastating storms, and again, people in Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, across the Caribbean are still reeling from the effects of Hurricane Fiona just last week. But here we are dealing with another major storm, this time affecting Florida. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis preemptively declared a state of emergency. He has the support of the federal government. The Biden administration said, yep, we're going to show up. And it's kind of funny in the sense that it's amazing what kind of science Americans believe and what kind of science they disbelieve. So we have been tracking, meteorologists have been tracking this storm in the Gulf and coming across the Atlantic for many days. And people believe that there was a big hurricane coming and they prepared. Yet climate scientists have been screaming, pulling their hair out, literally getting themselves arrested in acts of civil disobedience to bring attention to the climate catastrophe that these major, powerful hurricanes are a symptom of. And Americans are like, are you sure? are you sure? Come on, you've only been studying the issue for 30 years. Surely all this science and data cannot be believed. But people, I hope, did heed the meteorologist's warning about Hurricane Ian. And I want us to hear from the acting director of the National Hurricane Center. And gang, when the nerds get concerned, it is important to listen to the nerds, okay? Now, the nerds take their specific disciplines of study extremely seriously, as well they should. And when the nerds, the science nerds who understand the ways in which life and death can be affected by not only weather, but, you know, a myriad of things, it's important to heed the nerds. And I'm so sorry to this man for just calling him a nerd. I don't know this man is a nerd. He kind of gives me nerd vibes. But in the 21st century, nerd don't have the same connotation as it did once I was growing up. So really, you know, nerd is a compliment. So let's hear from the acting director of the National Hurricane Center when he is describing this historic storm surge that Floridians are going to expect throughout the duration of Hurricane Ian. Let's take a look.
Let's go back to the satellite image. You can see the strongest onshore winds to the south here is where the peak surge is going to occur. That's where the storm surge occurs, is where the winds are driving into the coastline. And this is magnified in this location because there's a little bit of a sort of a bay, if you will, which encapsulates or funnels the water. And that's why you see here on our forecast, I've been around for a long time, these are big numbers. I haven't seen numbers like this many times in my career. 12 to 18 feet in and around the Charlotte Harbor area. Just a very devastating event starting to unfold, unfortunately, for the residents of Southwest Florida. This is the latest tide station. So this is measuring the water level. So this is measuring the ocean level, if you will. You can see the surge coming up quickly, already in major flood status, which is what this purple area denotes. And it's only going to get worse. This is probably only a fraction of what they're going to get in this portion of the state. So like I said, a really unfortunate and sad situation unfolding for the Naples area and portions of Southwest Florida.
That was Jamie Rome from the National Hurricane Center. And when you have lifetime meteorologists and weather trackers and storm trackers say that they have not seen this type of effects from storm surge in their career, that's very significant. And here's the thing, when we talk about climate change and obviously the strengthening of hurricanes like this and the increasing amount of devastation that they inevitably will cause, what we are seeing, according to the scientists, is that hurricanes in the Atlantic are now strengthening at a more rapid pace. They are moving further and further north, right? Think about Hurricane Fiona just this past weekend striking the coast of Nova Scotia and Canada, right? Think about Superstorm Sandy wreaking all kinds of havoc in the New York City metropolitan area and New Jersey as well. So these storms are going to be with us and they are going to be causing more and more damage. Now, what are state governments and the federal governments doing in order to shore up infrastructure to make sure that these storms do not continue to be as costly? I'm concerned that Ian is going to end up costing a lot of money, right? The most expensive in terms of damaging hurricanes have been Katrina, Harvey, that came over the Houston area in Texas not that long ago. And I'm thinking about the 2 Cat 4 storms that struck Lake Charles, Louisiana, 2 summers in a row. I mean, just incredible, incredible things. But where is the money? Where is the money to shore up the stuff? Where is the money to make sure that these barrier islands are further protected? Sanibel Island off the western coast of Florida, 12-foot storm surge, right? And a lot of people didn't even evacuate. Everyone didn't get off the island. So we are sending definitely beyond thoughts and prayers, right? We are sending healing vibes of survival, and, you know, smart vibes for the leaders down there in Florida to do what they need to do. And of course, smarter vibes going up to Washington to stop playing games here. We are entering a cataclysmic period of weather for an indefinite period of time. So even though hurricane season was quiet up until now, if we keep seeing storms develop later in the season, September, October, is just going to be devastating. But another way in which the storm has revealed America's somewhat lack of preparation, right? I know FEMA's down there. They got a bunch of, water and ready to eat meals in place. That's good. That's good. I don't know how much preparation you can do in advance of a storm that's going to drop 20 inches of rain on your head, but they're going to do what they can, right? But workers, even in this category 4 storm, have the expectation of still showing up to work. There was a TikTok video from a worker in the Tampa area that has gone viral on social media. And the worker describes having to evacuate the flood zone, the flood area in which they live, and their job giving them instruction. Hey, once you get to the shelter, would you mind setting up your work stuff and clocking in? See, the audacity of capitalism. Let's take a look at this video. You guys will not believe your eyes.
So here in Tampa, the storm surge is going to be anywhere from 5 to 10 feet. These are the evacuation zones, which I am in. We've gotten constant messages telling us to get out, mandatory evacuations. And I just wanted to show everybody what my company said. So per their instructions, they want us to evacuate, right? Because we have to evacuate and go to a shelter. We have work from home items. Take all your work from home items and set it up in the shelter and continue working after you evacuated to the shelter. I'm gonna say that again. They want us to evacuate, go to a shelter, but take all our gear, hoping that the shelter has strong enough Wi-Fi, and set up all of our gear in the shelter and continue working our shifts. Has anyone else gotten this, or is my company just that insane?
I'm sure his company is not the only insane company out there, and that TikTok video credited to user Tall, Tan, and Handsome. So shout out to Tall, Tan, and Handsome. I want to see more of this. If people's companies are asking them, unrealistic is not even the word here. It is unreasonable to expect or demand someone who I assume is not a first responder. I'm assuming Tall, Tan, and Handsome is not an EMT or a firefighter. I'm assuming they have a regular sit in front of the computer type of job. Can you imagine the audacity of your boss asking you to work through a natural disaster and that is not your actual job? Joe Biden yesterday, I'm not sure if you guys saw this, but if you go to my channel, Burn It Down with Kim Brown, I talked a little bit about Joe Biden's tweets and his comments yesterday regarding capitalism. And Joe Biden sat down at his competition council, the White House Competition Council, a council that he formed in order to ensure that capitalism is fair for all. I said, Mr. Biden, do you understand the definition of capitalism? Capitalism, its whole modus operandi is exploitation, period. Exploitation of people, exploitation of resources, exploitation of people's labor and time. That's it. There is no fairness. There is no evening the playing field. Everyone who is successful at capitalism already had the score run up for them in advance, right? That is how capitalism works. It is based on a system of inequity. Rich people cannot be as rich as they are so long as poor people are living in destitution. That's it. The reason why we have poverty and the reason why we have homelessness is because of capitalist hoarding. They hoard all of the wealth and all of the resources for themselves, and then there is not an equal distribution of said wealth and resources. So that's why we have people out here suffering, not because they're lazy, not because they don't want to work, not because of any of that shit, because the reason why Jeff Bezos and Howard Schultz have to make goo gobs of money, and that is because their workers are underpaid. Their workers are not being compensated to the level of the output and the productivity that they actually provide for their CEOs. So it is fundamentally an unequal system that cannot be equaled. Okay. So when I see this poor man, tall, tan, and handsome, this poor fella, tall, tan, and handsome, has to go to a shelter during Category 4 hurricane and be expected to work. Now think about what that must be like for people who are low wage workers or people whose wages certainly do not match the expectation of their job critique or their job criteria, I should say. So looking at Hurricane Ian, with the tornadoes and everything being spawned from it, again, this is like a climate disaster, a climate catastrophe, one that is happening right in front of our eyes. I'm not even sure the most prepared state. I'm not even sure if FEMA was fully funded, and I'm not sure the FEMA is not fully funded, but even if all of the resources were there, I don't know how much mitigation you can do about loss of property and hopefully minimizing the loss of life. But it's imperative that people be as smart as they can. Please open up your homes or shelters or anything like that. If you know the elderly, people who are disabled, people who have mobility issues, when these sort of climate catastrophes and disasters happen, it is always the old folks that are forgotten about. It is always the disabled who is forgotten about. People who cannot move themselves, mobilize themselves for either physical disability or outright poverty. These are the people that get forgotten about and that are usually left to die. So what I want to see from the federal government and from the Florida state government is a response to those folks. What have you been doing preemptively to identify those folks, to move those folks to safe shelter, and to make sure that they are able to ride out the storm? You guys, when the power is out, guess what? Your breathing machine doesn't work. When the power is out, your CPAP may not work. When the power is out, a lot of medical equipment that you could rely on to live, that shit don't work. Now what? Now what? America keeps running up the bills on these big storms. What about protecting the most vulnerable amongst us to make sure that they also survive these devastating storms as they continue to come about with some more frequency?
Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in to Status Coup's daily live stream Monday through Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time and Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern Time.